listening to the Astral Hour. I'm your host, Astral Meadow. Join me as we take a glimpse into the mysterious. Welcome, everyone. Today, I'm joined with my friend Brian Scott. He is a musician and creates an uplifting fusion of music by combining instruments and vocals from other parts of the world into styles such as funk, jazz, rock, blues, country, and more. The mood and styles vary from chill to high energy. His intent is always to produce a positive, good, or relaxing vibe that goes well with yoga, dance, and flow states. Welcome to the show.
It's wonderful to be here. It's a beautiful home and a beautiful area. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for traveling out. Are you from here? Or?
Well, I consider East Tennessee and Knoxville my home because I lived here longer than most places.
Right.
But right now I live in Maryland with my family. Yeah.
So you traveled quite a ways to...
I have. I'm on a little 2-week journey right now, and this is one of the highlights right in the middle for me.
Awesome. I'm so glad. So can you share a little bit about yourself and your spiritual journey with us?
Sure. Thank you. I think at a young age, I was a spiritual seeker, not knowing that I was. My family wasn't particularly religious, but I was really interested in what I knew of or was exposed to, which was Bible stories and things like that. And I was actually kind of had a drive to get to church, even though my family didn't, my parents didn't. And so I grew up and I ended up getting involved in some different Christian churches along the way. And I even spent a couple of years as a Mormon, always kind of seeking, what feels right. And none of that felt right, so through those years, by the time I got to about middle of high school, I was like, no, that's not for me. But early in sometime in my college life, that's when I started getting exposed to, either more metaphysical or Eastern thought. And so that started a lot of reading and exploration, which I studied a lot through the years. And so now I kind of consider myself a very happy agnostic. I'm comfortable with not knowing. I don't have a sense of like, oh, this is right and I know. It's just I don't really know, and that's okay. But it's always based in a sense of safety and peace, though. Like I'm not concerned about it. Like, but I don't really know, and that's okay. And that kind of allows me to just kind of go with whatever sounds interesting at the moment.
Right. You can explore whatever you feel into at the time and not be so dedicated to a certain outcome. I don't know what to call myself. I never know. I mean, in agnostic, it's cool because there's that non-attachment. And so in a way, it's almost a lot of the Eastern religions, are already talking about that anyway. So
that's right. Yeah.
It's like you just trust that it's all going to work out.
Yeah.
And that's great. So
yeah. You're eclectic, honey.
What?
Eclectic. That's how I would describe you. Very eclectic.
I guess I could see that for myself. So. I forgot to introduce Philip. Philip Clift is in the house with us tonight, so he might have some input here and there.
Hey, y'all.
Just so everyone knows, like Philip and I go way back, right?
Way back.
We met early 20s and lived together for years then. So it's good to have you here, brother.
Yeah, man. I wouldn't miss it.
Awesome.
We really, as far as spiritual journeys go, man, we were in deep for several years, and we learned a lot together.
Yes, we
early
did.
on, so that's a powerful bond that we've maintained throughout our entire adult lives. Even though we haven't lived in the same city, we've always stayed close and, in contact. And it's just like we, were in the old days, just distance in between, so it's been really nice.
Beautiful. I love that. Can you tell us about your musical journey and your approach and intent with the music you're creating now?
Yeah, sure. I've been through a lot of different musical styles. I studied instruments growing up as a kid, and a lot of piano and a lot of guitar. I was always really interested in lots of different styles, and I would dig deep in different styles at different times where, where I'd really want to explore that style, and its foundations, and then I would move to another. From a performance and writing perspective, I was very active in the blues community down in Atlanta for a decade, and then I really moved into more of the Americana kind of, which is and then that kind of moved into a singer-songwriter, where I was really exploring composition and writing and lyrics a lot, and expressing aspects of my life journey through that. And then about 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to write a musical with a playwright, and that completely changed my view and vision of what music could be for me, because it was so outside my box of what I was used to, and it was just like taking the roof off the house, right? And it's just like everything got exciting after that, and that led to what I do now. And what I do now is I'm more of a producer. I play mainly piano or keys, and I create a fusion of musical styles. And what I typically will find instruments or vocals from other countries, largely India or the Middle East, and I will fuse them into American styles. So whether it's rock or country or funk or just chill out groove or whatever, but I'll take my background and sensibility of American styles, and I'll find a way to match these instruments or vocals that normally don't mix with that. And then I try to do that in a way where ultimately the song brings some light and some happiness. And I think it's good for folks that are practicing mindfulness practices or yoga or maybe meditation or dance or whatever. But even though they all have a lot of different styles in them and sounds, I feel like that's the common thread that tries to hold it together.
Right. Yeah, I really love listening through your little discography, and I'm into all sorts of different genres, and some of my favorite bands, I really love Thievery Corporation. I don't know if you've
yes, I do. I like
they
them too.
blend a lot of different things, and it's so satisfying to me. That's one of the records I play. I'll go through their discography very frequently, because it just, sometimes I feel like I'm in like Jamaica, or sometimes I'm in France, and it just, they bring that culture in. And Gorillaz does a really good job too. They'll just use these really cool voices, and he's actually got the musician coming in. But when I was listening to your stuff, the samples of the different vocals, I was like, this is so good.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah. So.
The yoga community in Knoxville likes it, I can assure you, because I've had, I weave Brian's tracks into my playlist that I play for classes and stuff, and people have very often will ask me like what that is or who that is. And I'm like, that's my buddy.
I really have enjoyed doing yoga and stuff, listening to it. I do a lot of ecstatic dance too, so I'm gonna probably share some of it with my instructor or whatever, because she's all the time looking for the different moods, because it starts gentle and then it gets quick, and I'm like, you literally have something for like each of the phases, which is kind of cool.
I that happened accidentally, I think. I just it just resonates with where I'm at, and sometimes I'm feeling like I want to dance, and I get into something that's funk, and when I get done with that, I've kind of felt like I got that out of my system, and then like, now I just really want to chill, and I just want to go into something totally different. And so this journey over the last 2 or 3 years that I've been doing this fusion, it's been the most productive of my life. I'm pumping out so much music. It's almost like I'm just holding on. It's just like pouring out, and so, and it just keeps going other places. And so I hope it just continues, because it's been fun.
Right. Yeah. I'm an artist, and I've just been learning all these different forms of art and working with all the different mediums. And ever since I've, added more in, it just keeps flowing, and I never get bored. So like if I get tired of embroidering, I might paint. If I get tired of painting, I might do collage, and it just never stops.
Yeah.
And it keeps it fresh. It's just,
I think that's important for an artist, right? Because as a musician, when I was in the Americana singer-songwriter thing, I got stuck for a while because I thought this is what I'm supposed to do, and it just kept getting a little drier and a little drier, and I felt like it just wasn't flowing, and that's why writing that musical was just like cracking the egg open, and then this gush of energy came out. So now now I'm conscious of that, and I'm like, even if it's absolutely different, just go somewhere, that's completely different, because that's what keeps that energy, that creative energy flowing.
For sure. I, for a little while, would say I don't take commissions. And sometimes I don't. If I'm in a really big creative flow, I'll just do what I want to do. But every now and then I'll take a commission. And I'm like, I don't think I can do this, But it will force me out of my comfort zone, and I always end up nailing it. Like, there was a couple things that I've done for Philip, and I'm like, I don't think I'll in my mind I'll say I can't do that, and then I'll just start doing it.
Yeah.
But it like proves to us that we can, we're actually boundless as far as creativity goes. We can go as far as we want, but we get stuck in like these little boxes that we put ourselves in. So let's see. Do you think you could share some samples with us of a few of your songs and what inspired them?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's start with one of the earlier works that I put together. It's off an EP called Goya B. And this is really the very first EP where I said, I really want to focus on something for mindfulness and for yoga, and that we're going inward. And so it really got into the chill out side of things. And to date, that EP I love, but one of the songs on there, it's called Goya Rakana, is still probably maybe my all-time favorite. It's just really, really personal to me. I just absolutely love this song. So yeah, let's listen to a little bit.
Now, is that a sitar that's being played? Or is it sounds like it's gourdish kind of slide instrument to me.
That's a great question. And that's kind of gets a little bit before I answer that. And maybe I'll answer it. It's an oud, an O-U-D, an oud, one of my all-time favorite instruments. That's kind of what I've discovered about how I go about my creative process is when I'm ready to do a new EP, and I normally have about 4 EPs under development and creation at a given time. But when I finish one and I put another one in, I go out and I start to seek something that inspires me, and so I'll either be looking at virtual instruments and playing some stuff, or I'll go look at, listen to samples, and it could be vocals, it could be an instrument, it could be a drum beat, it could be whatever. And in this case, I came across this oud, these oud samples, and I'm like, and the oud, it is a gourd instrument, it's a stringed instrument. It's very old, right? They have almost every country, in the Middle East and Africa, they have their version of this instrument. There's the barbat, I think, is the one that it's called, and it goes, a couple of thousand years back, right?
Is a sitar a gourd?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. So it's a manufactured thing, like a guitar, more so.
I think so, although I'm not a sitar expert by any means. But I heard this, and actually the oud is a higher sounding instrument, but I really liked the quality of it. And as part of this, bringing it back and really bringing it down, I dropped the pitch of this oud by a good 5 or 6 whole steps. So that gives it that deep resonant sounding to it. And then in conjunction with the bass part that I found, I was like, that's it, right? And that's what inspired me for this EP. I was like, so there's a lot of oud on this EP all the way through it, right?
Interesting. I definitely, when I listen to the song, it creates a scene. Like I can like see a visual. And I was listening to it when I was setting up, and I was having a little bit of anxiety, honestly, just because I always like spaz a little the day up. And I put this song on, and I was like relaxing, and then I started really seeing like a vision of me like walking. So it starts with this like, and it starts with walking, and that stays like kind of throughout the whole song. But then you would like bring something in, and it was like I would be walking and like this new experience would come in, or I would see something else go by, and I was like, oh, it made me feel like I was in a video game or something.
That's so cool. I'm glad that you mentioned about kind of like the journey. So another aspect of all of my music is it's all long play. I call long play. I think, probably the shortest tunes I might produce now might be 7 or 8 minutes. This one happens to be 17 minutes long, right? So, but I don't understand modern music's fascination with it. It has to be 3.5 minutes, and it's like this little thing, It's like if you like a song, like I want more of that. I've always been that way. I'm like, and some of my favorite artists from the past, if they have some extended play song, which might be 6 minutes long or 7, I've always loved that, right?
Yes.
And so with this kind of music, if you're really talking about mindfulness and thinking about what you're doing and getting into something, it's like, 3 and 6 minutes is not long enough. I mean, you've got to let yourself go with this vibe, and if it's working for you, right, then let it go. But I go places, it's a journey. Each song I kind of feel like is a journey. It builds, it adds in some new things, but it always comes back, to the core at the end. And then they usually always start relatively calmly and build, and then they ease that way out, right? So you kind of ease into it, and then you can ease out of the tune.
Right, it's like a breath.
Yeah. So the core is the walking, right?
Yeah.
And that's the core of the song. That's the main structure of it is the walking, and then whatever comes into your field as you're walking is the different.
Yeah, that's a nice visualization. Yeah, it is nice.
Yeah, I loved it.
And you were saying about our Life as Guru workshop. We got flagged for playing some music in that, and what we want to do from here on out is play your music, because you'll give us permission to do that.
Absolutely. And play any of it and all of it, all you want.
Yeah.
That would be great. I'd be honored.
Yeah, we're going to do that.
Yeah, it works out that they're a little bit longer, so we could play like 2 songs, and that would be great for the yoga in the beginning. So.
As a little side note, the name of this tune and this album, but I try to have some meaning behind those as well. And Goya is an Urdu word that conveys a contemplative as if feel, with reality. And then Rakana, it says this is Goya Rakana, is Hindi for slow down. So I try to find something that matches, that's a little esoteric that people may not know, but that matches each of these tunes.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
We'll definitely go into each of the titles as we talk about them. Let's see if there is. Oh, yeah. I love when the piano comes in. Like, as I was listening to it earlier, when the piano came in, I wanted to cry. I was like, but it was just because, like, it was this beautiful, like, swoopy feeling of, like, something new that was, I don't know. It's just added so much beauty that actually made me tear up a little bit. But I'm kind of an emotional person, so
that's a great compliment, and that's okay. I cry at this music all the time. So
right.
But those are jazz chords, right? So that's a bit of another Americana spill into that. So it's got this great earthy vibe with this Middle Eastern instrument. And then here comes these jazz chords over it, so it's
Right,
nice.
I love that. One of my all-time favorite bands is the Beatles, and so that's where I've like got introduced to the sitar and the blue, because they kind of just played around with a lot of different stuff, especially like the White Album. That had some bluesy stuff, and
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm really grateful to be able to hear that, because most of the music we hear on the radio it's all kind of like the same, and it gets really boring and dull to me after a while. So
Me too.
I love bringing in like the different cultures and the different chants and stuff.
Yeah, I felt for a while like, the future of music is blending genres, and that's what you're doing with all this, because a new genre is hard to create, but fusing them together in the way that you're doing them is a great way to like evolve musical composition, because it blends, these different sounds and these different ideas into a comprehensive whole, which is really, really cool. And that's what I pick up from this music that you're doing.
Well, it's nice to know, and I appreciate the compliment. All of these, you were mentioning getting emotional at it, but it's actually, I since I started this, I've almost listened to nothing but this music. First off, I'm pumping out a lot of it pretty quickly, and it's part of my building process is to listen to it. But all of it, even though they're all so different, as we'll see as we go through, but it's definitely, I feel like, an expression of me. It's a part of me. So I hear me in all of this, and that can be very emotional at times. When I'm just driving down the road, I'll be like,
That's so beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's hard to make any kind of art and not put yourself into it. Like it's like, I think of Harry Potter with like the Horcrux or something. Like you put a little bit of your soul into these like objects or these EPs or whatever it is. And,
you absolutely do. Yeah.
And like there's memories of like the time period that you were creating it. So you might hear it and you like remember, well, I don't know much about you, but for me it might be like my daughter's first steps are associated with Cat Stevens, or something like that. Yeah. So music is a great way for me to like store memories and
definitely time capsules.
Yes. So, all right, I'm probably gonna mess up saying this, but the Sadhu EP was my favorite.
Nice.
I listened to, what is it, Sadhu Pratham?
Yes.
Okay. On repeat. Even though it's long, I just kept wanting to go back into it. And then when you sent me the whole EP, I realized that you had like did a remix with that chant, and it was like I got excited all over again. Like when one of my favorite musicians does a remix. I listen to a lot of DJs and stuff, so every now and then they'll put out a remix that I just get really excited to hear it from a new perspective. So
yeah, this EP, Sadhu, what really triggered me on that, inspired me on that, was I found these Sufi vocals.
Yeah.
And, so Sufi is that aesthetic of, mysticism of Islam. And they were really captivating, right? And I was like, I got to do that. And there were a lot of different ones. And so this, I was talking about the songs being a journey, but I also kind of think of the EPs are even a larger journey. And I try to create some continuity between them, not just stylistically, but in this particular case, I'm glad you picked up on that.
Yeah.
The first one, Sadhu Pratham, and Pratham means first in Hindi.
Oh, okay.
And then there's Dusara and Trisara, which is second and third. Is the individual Sufi chant, and then the Tisara at the end is the group chant of that, but it's the same melody. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I've studied a little bit of Sufism. I've went on a couple retreats where we chant for days. And so it might have been like when I turned it on, it just sort of like reignited my love for like those Sufi meditations that we would do.
Yeah.
And which I would retain none of. She would be like, don't go and just teach this to people. I'm like, I don't remember any of it. But I remember how I felt when I was doing the chants,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes we would keep the chant in our minds and go to walk around. So this was like in Atlanta, but we would keep saying it like over and over again. But as soon as we would sit down and discuss it, I would forget the chant. And it wasn't about like what it was saying as much as like the energy that it's evoking. And I was asking you about what's the translation, and you were like, it's more about using it like an instrument.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I don't know the majority of the translations on these languages that I use. And I really like it that way.
Right.
Because then it takes that aspect of it out. I'm confident they're positive, it's not like,
Right.
first off, the set where I find them, that's what's the reason they're being produced. But, and you can just feel, the energy coming from them is positive.
Yes.
But then it lets me mix it without the meaning complicating it, and it does make me kind of think of multiple vocals as instrumentation. In fact, a lot of this, and in this tune, I think there's some of it. There's multiple parts of these being layered on top of each other, because I'm thinking of them as layered instruments as opposed to just what is this person saying? If someone else was saying something on top, it would get confusing. It's not confusing when it's just sound.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was like I didn't know what they were saying, but I've read a lot of Rumi and Hafez, and there would be times when I was listening to it where I would like feel the same way I would feel when I read a Hafez poem.
Nice.
So like it like captured the essence and the beauty of that like Sufi mysticism without actually defining it. Like, but it was sending me back to all my experiences I've had with Sufism. So it was really, I think that's why I got hung up on it and kept listening to it.
That's great. I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think a lot of our listeners will love it too. It's right up my alley, and I think everyone, wants to find like that good music to meditate or to do like dance or yoga too. It's really hard. I actually seek out music without lyrics all the time, and I'll have to go through like so many songs before I can finally create a playlist. So it's awesome that all of your stuff is sort of like that can be used that way.
Nice.
It's extremely difficult to find good music for this type thing. I mean, you gotta wade through so much that's out there, and finding instrumentals is particularly difficult.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a great source of really really quality stuff for any type of yoga or mindfulness training for sure.
Well, let's listen to a part of it.
Okay, let's do it.
What's really interesting, when you don't understand the language, when somebody's singing, when the singing comes on, it's like it's another instrument.
Right.
It doesn't even feel like singing in a lot of ways because you don't understand what they're saying. So it's like a really complex instrument,
That's exactly the way I'm using it. Yeah. Or why I do that.
Yeah. I like to sing, and I've dabbled in a lot of instruments. I've never mastered any of them. I can pick it up, learn a couple of songs, and then I'm just like, I kind of move on. But I love singing so much, and I can do twangy, I can sing like soul and all, and I've just never felt the need to learn a lot of instruments because I use my voice as the instrument. And I'm like, that's such a good resource. I feel like, because it's on me all the time. I can access it whenever I want.
Well, it's the ultimate instrument. I mean, the voice is the ultimate instrument. I mean, I think it penetrates people's, emotions and spirit faster than any other instrument. I mean, it really is very penetrating, which is a magical quality. So that's great.
Yeah, I had a sound healer on not too long ago, and she was talking about, at the end of the day, mantras are actually the best way, because your voice activates the healing within your body better than any outside source. So like tuning forks and all that work. But if you could just get into doing regular mantras, that you would, not need so much of it, the other things.
Yeah. Makes sense.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about the 3D Wooly song. And I thought that maybe you could go into a little bit about where this one came from, and then we can play a little bit of it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, this one's a definite connection to Mr. Philip here. Because back in the day when we were, exploring so many different thought systems, I'm a science major and I'm a science guy, and so that book, The Dancing Woolly Masters in '79 by Gary Zukav, it was the first book that I came across that tied quantum physics and what we were learning in science into mysticism and spirituality, right? Mm-hmm. And man, it just blew me away. I mean, it just totally blew me away. And then so I started reading a lot of those books, right? And there was a period of time where they were pumping out a lot of them. This was in the, I don't know what it was now, the late 80s, early 90s. It was a very popular thing. And so that had a big influence on my life. And helped form my metaphysical belief system as well. But when we were living together, I bought a cement statue of I'm not sure what it was, but it looked like a wise man, like from the Middle East, or from Eastern, a wise man. And he was just standing there, And so we named him 3D Wooly because we put some 3D glasses on him, because we were 20 years old, right? And we named 3D Wooly after that. Well, I still have that statue today. He's in my little garden right outside our patio. And so this EP, my intent around this was, Philip has always been so in love with electric guitars and a rockin' sound, and I did really want to make something that I felt like he could put in use in one of his yoga sessions where he wanted some high energy and some of that rock and roll sound. I said, all right, I'm gonna rock out. And so as a shout out to that time of our lives and that statue that I used another one of those statues on the album cover. I named this the Wooly Masters, right?
Beautiful. I love that.
Love it. What you were saying about blending quantum physics with spirituality is making me realize that the same thing that's happening in music is happening with spirituality too. And that's what we're doing. We're blending a bunch of these different systems into, like a single system of thought. And that's kind of where the evolution of human consciousness is going in so many ways right now.
Right. Well,
isn't that interesting?
Is like the law of one. So it's actually all interconnected. So it goes together so well because it's actually not so separate like we kind of think.
Yeah. So music and spirituality are, really blending in that way. That's the music of the spheres. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we have a long future ahead of us of using my music with what you guys are doing.
Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, as soon as you were like, you could use it on the show if you wanted, I immediately, because we had just got flagged, we had to crop all the yoga out of our last video just because of one of the songs, but we never had that happen before. Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, you were like, you could use my music right when I was like editing that out. And I was like, oh, well, this would be great for.
Perfect. I didn't think of that, honestly.
I've got about 25 hours worth of it that you can choose from now. So
cool.
That should be plenty. Yeah.
Yeah. We do 15 or 20 minutes of yoga in the beginning. So it's.
What language was that, by the way? Was that
we were just listening to?
Yeah.
That was the Sufi.
Oh, so that was actually what language would that be?
I think it's.
Is it Farsi maybe? I'm not sure. Or Arabic?
Not a linguist.
I don't know. I thought it was. I don't think called Sufi, but I'm not sure.
I don't think Sufi is a language.
Yeah, I don't know.
Philosophical system.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, I don't know. That's interesting, but I love the language. It's beautiful.
Right.
You know, and it really sounds like an instrument. Remarkable, super sophisticated instrument. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So for Mr. Philip, I had to like not just go into some electric guitars, right? I had to pull one of our favorites in a little bit, which is a little Hendrix
I was
feel
thinking it sounds a little bit like Voodoo Child when I was as soon as I turned it on, I was like, this is very Hendrix-y.
You know, Hendrix might be the first person that was kind of where, you know, well, the 60s for sure. They were starting, all this was kind of, you know, emerging, blending genres and really going deep into the, you know, combining spirituality and music together into a, you know, a uniform thing.
Yeah.
Hendrix was definitely doing
and
that.
he was a big fusion guy about all different kinds of sounds and styles and stuff. So yeah, very cutting edge.
I remember the first time I like heard Jimi Hendrix. I was obsessed with Forrest Gump when I was a kid. Like I was watching it in kindergarten, and I would watch it and sometimes I would just listen to the music. Eventually, my parents bought me the soundtrack, but there's a couple of Jimi Hendrix songs on there, and it just stuck with me.
There is in there.
You know,
I forgot about that.
like.
Very
and that's
powerful.
with the blues and stuff too. Is like Red House is one of my first like blues songs, and I was like, I just love this. And my mom was like, "What are you listening to?" I'm like in the '90s, like going through what these people in like the '70s were going through with their moms. Like this is crazy. I can't believe my kid's singing this.
God, you started with Red House, and for your, I mean, yeah, you like
Well,
started
it was
at the top of the
on
line.
the City of Angels soundtrack.
Oh,
This
that's
is what
right.
happened.
Yeah, totally.
And I just fell in love. Eventually, I bought like his greatest hit CD, and then you know it went from there. But
I think one of my favorite things about Hendrix, though, is that if you see interviews with him talking, you know, because he's got this, his music is wild and crazy and energized or whatever. He's such a quiet, gentle soul when he's talking, right?
Super humble.
Very humble, down to earth, chill, you know, not, and it's a wonderful difference to see.
right.
Yeah, that Dick Cavett interview. He said, we understand that you may be the greatest guitar player in the world," and he just looks at him and he's like, "Well, I'm definitely the greatest guitar player in this seat."
Yeah, right.
I love it.
Yeah.
Want to hear a little Wu Lee?
Yeah, let's do it.
It feels like it was meant to be put together that way. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like it's different cultures, you know, being blended together. It feels like it's, you know, one culture manifesting in a variety of different ways. So.
That's what, like, one of the best things about the internet is that we're able to really hear and, you know, connect with all of these different cultures. And
Yeah, if it wasn't for the internet, you'd have a hard time doing what you're doing right now, wouldn't you?
Definitely. Yeah. You know, the ability to seek out samples of different kind of stuff is, you know, I guess it didn't exist in the past for a reason, or it was so esoteric because it was very difficult. And nowadays there are whole labels, you know, album labels that all they do is create samples, you know, for reuse. And that's where I get a lot of this stuff, you know. So it's but you know, when I first started this, before this, of course, I was writing and playing and recording everything myself. And, you know, there's a little bit of like people thinking, well, you're just pulling samples. But as soon as you record something, it's just a sample, right? And then you start mixing it just like anything else. So I don't feel like it's any less creative or any less mine when I'm putting it, because anyone else would come across any one of those samples and hear it totally different and do something different with it, and you wouldn't even recognize it as the same. It's the mashup and the fusion of them together that creates this unique thing. And so, I still feel like it's very individualized in that way.
Yeah, there's no way anyone else could possibly come up with that exact format that you did right there. There's no way. I mean, that's distinctly you, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, 100%.
Right, and all those layers, that's a lot. My husband does mixes. He doesn't layer too much, but he'll spend, like weeks on a mix just making this song sort of blend into that. So I couldn't imagine how much time you're putting into it,
Well, it's a lot.
Right.
But it's a love, so it's, I don't, if I could do it all the time, I think I probably would, but I try to get as much as I can in every week.
Right. And as far as like pulling samples, that makes me think of with art, I might draw a violet and someone else might draw a violet, a totally different, put that violet in a different setting or maybe in a vase or,
right.
So we're always just like kind of pulling from what's inspiring us,
Right.
Like it's like we're experiencing something else and then we make art out of that. Even if we're just doing it all on our own, it's still coming from all these other places. Like maybe you're hearing songs like just, sometimes I'll hear like construction and I'll start hearing like a beat in it and I'm like, that could be a song, but these musicians, like they might not even realize that might be where the rhythm came from,
Right.
So
I do think that there's a strong similarity between painting and music production. Because both of them are a blending, process of blending. And it's not just the colors you're using, right? And the colors you're making, it's the stroke style, right? The texture of the stroke that you're using. And so all of that, I think, translates exactly into music, how you're blending them and the sonic characteristics you're giving it while you're blending it. Because you can, obviously with today's technology, you can just tune everything exactly the way you want it sonically,
Right.
So I like that metaphor.
Yeah, it's cool to talk to a musician and then as an artist, because it is like we're speaking a similar language. And I do love music, so I think about it, often just like what are they really doing? Like how are they creating this? And I find a lot of similarities with it, because even with like art, you're blending paint, but what if you added sand into the paint? What if you added extra water? And that's when you're like bringing in the synthesizer or something,
right, exactly.
Making some deep throat sound,
right.
Just completely changing up the materials, which is really cool.
That's right.
So.
This is your practice, man. I mean, this is like it's a spiritual practice. I mean, you're calling it music, and it is music, but you're using music to go within, and access, deep layers within yourself. That's exactly what you're doing. So it's your practice.
I believe that because I shared with you, we were talking last week, and I shared that when I'm often, I drive in my car and I listen to this a lot, critical listening and thinking, what do I want to do as I'm developing these songs? But time goes away, and I mean, I'm not there, I'm just driving somewhere, and I'm safe, I'm sure, because I haven't run into anybody, but, I'll just, 10 minutes will go by, and it's like I'm in some kind of outer space zone, right? I'm just not really present. I'm lost in this soundscape, and it can be very emotional as well. I was watching something on TV recently, and there were some kids, and they were playing a sport, right? And they won, right? And so they were all, they were going, yeah, and I was thinking back, do you remember the last time you were so excited, right? That you were screaming, right? And I can get that way. Like when I'm, if it's a high energy tune and I've just created it and I'm really starting to get it to lock in. I mean, at the end of the tune, I'll be in my car literally screaming the same way. I'll be like, yeah.
Right. Like it finally all went together and it clicked. And
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. When you said the Goya wrote kind of song was like 19 minutes, I've listened to that multiple times. I didn't even realize it was 19 minutes because I'm not like looking at the timestamp.
Right.
So I definitely have listened to it from start to finish, and it seems like time's irrelevant when it's going. So.
Right.
Be here now. Yeah. It's being in the moment. You're like fully present in the moment.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the One Love EP?
One Love. I'd love that. I'd love to. One Love. So this one's interesting in that the vocals that inspired me on this were not of a foreign language, right? I was looking through samples, and I think I went into, and it was kind of like a soul, groove sample, with maybe even, not really any hip hop, but I guess soul more also. And this guy's voice just really captivated me, and what he was singing about was so positive. I mean, it was all about love and connection. I was like, I got to do something with that, right? So since the vocals were in English, then I said, all right, well, then I definitely want the music to be a little more, to juxtapose against that a little bit more. So I really lean heavily on sitar a lot in this, and then a very set of cool grooves. So it's still a groovy. I call it what I call chill out music. So it's got a groove energy. It's got a lot of sitar drone, which I love sitar drone, where it just constantly just that sound in the background, while this guy layers these beautiful messages through it. And so I was really pleased with this EP.
Yeah, we'll play a little bit from it.
One love, baby. We're together, united under one roof. In the house is ours. It's one love forever and ever.
Now it's available for everyone.
I love it.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Can you share a little bit about your blues background and maybe a sample from Bring It To Me Straight?
Absolutely. So, the blues was played a huge part in my musical life. So much so, it was like a profound revelation to me when the first time I heard it and recognized it for what it was. And I remember it to this day. I was in 8th grade, came home from school, and I was sat down to watch something on HBO. Had no idea what it was, and it was a Broadway show called Eubie. And it was a celebration of a composer named Eubie Blake, who was an African-American composer in the 20s and the 30s who wrote Broadway shows back then. He was popular back in his time. He's a piano player. And this was, this would have been in 78. And he was still alive, although he was like 90 years old or something, and so they did this Broadway special of a celebration of his music. And so I sat down and I watched it, and it's fun music, and they're dancing and everything. And then they played this song called Low Down Blues, and it was a straight blues song, right? And there was a guy, it was Gregory Hines, who was he was a tap dancer. He was a famous tap dancer and became a movie star, actually. If you look him up, he's passed away now. He sang it. And he sang a blues song, right? Ooh. And it blew me away. I mean, I was totally captivated and speechless as a kid. I was like, what is that? I mean, it was the most powerful song I'd ever heard in my life. I mean, and so, years later, I came to understand as I explored more music, like, that was the blues, and that's what got me into it. And from there, I heard it in rock and roll, and I always heard it, And then it was probably Stevie Ray Vaughan who really like said, dude, you got to go down this path and like really explore this, right? You know, because, so I was one of, a million young white males who, he highly influenced, right? But that started me on this journey of Stevie was great about paying homage to those that came before him, and he would talk about them all the time. And I'm like, oh, who's that? Who's Albert King? Okay, I'll go listen to him. And so I just started crawling back decade by decade until, you get to the very earliest recordings. And I went through that whole phase and I played it out live, and I was just so in love with it. And I don't listen to it as much today, but it's a foundation of what I do. And so this EP, I realized, I had finished some and I was like, I need my next inspiration. And it kind of struck me, I was dumbstruck. I was like, I haven't done anything with blues yet. I can't believe that, with that being such a core part of me. So I said, if I'm going to do this, I wanted to make it a bit the same, where I was pulling in some Indian influence through either some vocals or some instruments, but definitely capturing different styles of blues. But I wanted to pay homage to some of those blues greats. So there are vocal clips in each of these songs that are kind of mixed in the back. Mm-hmm. There's 4 tunes on this EP, and one of them has Muddy Waters on it. The other is John Lee Hooker. Third is Lightning Hopkins, and the last is Howlin' Wolf. And Howlin' Wolf is, of course, the inspiration for the name of the song and the EP, which is Howlin' at the Mudra.
Ah, I love that. I love that you're adding blues into it, because I think sometimes I get a little bored with like spiritual musicians because they fail to recognize some of the other emotions besides happy. And
Amen.
So I can listen to the blues when I'm in any mood, but I cannot listen to like super happy music in any mood. Like, but the blues just, it brings up all this emotion and this soul, and I love it. So
the blues is a feeling, man.
It really is.
It teaches you how to feel other forms of music, even. If you can connect with the feeling of the blues, and you got a greater appreciation for everything else, I think.
Absolutely. Well, I think you can hear the emotion in the blues greats' voices coming through their life experience. And they had such rich, deep voices that are just captivating, and then they learned how to make their guitars say the same thing, right?
Right.
They speak the same way through the guitar. And of course, it changed the world. It changed music. I mean, it absolutely changed the world from a musical perspective. I mean, what more can you say than you just completely revolutionized all things known to music.
Absolutely. I mean, it birthed rock and roll for sure.
Yeah.
And it may have been, it may have predated jazz as well.
Yeah, it was definitely an added influence of that, no doubt. And the name of this song, Give It To Me Straight, I was on YouTube looking for interview clips with Muddy Waters, and he was one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. If you haven't listened to 1972's Hard Again, do yourself a favor and go get it. And
I just did a post about that today, actually, man, on Facebook. Yeah. Oddly enough,
it's probably the best blues album in the world in my life, in my opinion. But I found this clip of Muddy Waters being interviewed in somewhere like England or Stockholm or something, and the interviewer said something to him that you could tell kind of struck him a little odd, and he didn't understand what he was saying, and he was trying to decide maybe if should I be offended or not, right? And so, they're from different countries and different backgrounds, and so Muddy Waters wanted him to explain himself, right? So the way Muddy Waters was saying this, because you can tell he was a little worked up, he was just like, give it to me straight. No, bring it to me straight. Bring it to me straight. Bring it to me straight. And the guy was like, what? So that's the name of the song, is Bring It To Me Straight.
I love it, man. I love it.
I love that. All right, well, let's share a little clip from it. definitely had some Wood Brother vibes for me. So
I'll take any connection to Wood Brothers anytime I can. That's a beautiful thing.
right. I love that you know them because it's very rare. Like I'll wear my shirt and everyone will be like, "Who's that?" They'll be like,
Yeah.
"The Wood Broth," because my hair will cover up.
Well, I got to give a shout out to this bar in Atlanta. It's still there. It started in 1972. It's called Northside Tavern. And I was down there in the 90s, and that's when I was playing blues, and that was like the local blues musicians, the real blues musicians hangout, 7 days a week, music 7 days a week. And it was a beautiful scene. They started having festivals that honored blues musicians from the past that were still alive, that were struggling, low income or struggling, and we would do fundraisers for them. So these guys that were recording in the 50s and the 60s, and we got them back involved into the blues, which was wonderful. But anyway, Oliver Wood was in a band that came out of that bar, as well as several other artists. Sean Costello, who's no longer with us, that was great. But if you make it to Atlanta, look up Northside Tavern and go treat yourself. Now it's a dive, but that's the way blues is supposed to be played.
It's supposed to be played in a dive, man.
I would love to do that. I'm always looking for other things to do when I'm in Atlanta, and I feel like I get overwhelmed, and I'm like, there's too many options. So I'm definitely going to check that out for sure.
Absolutely.
You should.
All right, so let's talk about maybe some of the instruments that you used in your song Brothers and Sisters, and maybe play a little clip from it.
Yeah. So I had dabbled with a lot of stuff and a lot of grooves and kind of got funky on several EPs, but I had yet to really go all in on the funk. And so hence the name of the EP, Funk Shiva. I was like, I'm going to do it. And so actually what the thing I found that really triggered this for me was these horns. I found these samples of horns, and they were playing these great, funks. And I was like, all right, I got to do that. And so it was so fun, so funky, getting the bass involved, getting the drums. And of course, I still bring in Indian vocals into it and some other Indian. So it's just another fusion, But this is great if you want to dance, if you want to feel really, to me, this is one of the lightest, happiest feeling EPs that they're there. It's just, when I can't not smile when I'm listening to this album.
Right. And that's just, I feel like that's funk in general. Like it is so much fun. One of my favorite concerts I've ever saw was Earth, Wind and Fire on my birthday. And we went through this, like all the elements on the way there. It was like a hailstorm, then it was beautiful. And there was like snow, like it looked like snow on the ground, but I was like walking barefoot, into the show. And, I just had a blast. I swear to gosh, the weather went crazy. Like we had to pull off and everything. And I was like, how meaningful is this? Right. Yeah. And to this day, I think I danced harder at that Earth, Wind and Fire show than I probably have at like some of the jam bands I've seen. But
it's impossible not to dance to it.
Oh,
it's so good. I think my story for that was Maceo Parker, who was the band leader and the saxophone player for James Brown for years. And so he would tour without James Brown. It's just called the Maceo Parker Band, but of course they'd play these James Brown. And so in Atlanta at the Variety Playhouse, which is the best venue, I think in the South at least, and nice and intimate, but maybe 500-600 people. And my friend and I were, we were one of very few white people in the crowd, I'd say, and it was so welcoming. Oh, really?
Yeah, that was me.
Get out of here.
Yeah, we went to that together. We were the only white people in the whole place.
I can't believe that. I forgot.
It was wild. I mean, I never experienced that before.
Yeah, and it was
cool.
It was fun. It was welcoming. And we stood, never sat down, even though there were seats, the entire time, because you couldn't, because it was just, I've got to shake my booty to this.
Absolutely.
Oh, I love that.
Well, let's hear a little funk.
Sounds good.
Chegar, vem pra dançar, sem tem começou a borbulhar. Babolina, babolina, babolin style. Babolina, babolina, babolin. Babolina, babolina, babolin style. Babolina, babolina, babolin. Quero ver quem vem no swing bom se jogar também junto nesse som. Nesse vai e vem, não tem não. O respeito é a lei dentro do salão.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
You're welcome. Thank you. I got a little shake in a little wiggle in my leg there.
Right? I mean, like, yeah, dancing a little bit over here the whole time. So, all right. So, what's been the most meaningful experience you've had as a musician? I know that this is a big question, but is there anything that comes to mind that just really
I think
stands
it's been, there's been obviously some, with live performances have been, very fun, and there's been a lot of meaningful ones of that. But when you say what's the most meaningful, it has to be just this personal inner experience I have with myself, with the music that I'm creating, right? It's like I'm expressing myself. I'm also getting to know myself. I'm, releasing myself. I'm experiencing myself. It's just this circular feedback thing, dance with myself that I've done all my life now, whatever. And it's absolutely critical, to do now. It's like I have to go and every week, probably once or twice, I'll get finished with work or whatever, and I'm just like, I'm going to go drive for a while. And I just go and I just put on, and I listen to my music, and I just get lost in it, and it just lets everything go. I just have that. So to me, that's probably been the most meaningful or impactful, because it's been some kind of exercise or practice for me in that way.
Right. Sort of like a journey to the self,
Yeah.
100%.
Oh, sorry. Let's knock you out with this mic.
Yeah, it's your spiritual practice, man. I mean, there's no question about it. It's obvious. So it's beautiful.
Well, that's so beautiful that you share it with the world, and that you're not just like playing in your garage and keeping it to yourself. You're actually creating something with it that's shareable for others, so that we can meditate with you and dance with you.
Well, that's why I'm so grateful that you're willing to share it to your audience and the people, because it's really meaningful to me. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it's perfect for our audience. I think a lot of people will definitely enjoy it and find it just as meaningful as we do. So, is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap it up? Any new music that you got coming out?
Sure. That my latest release that just hit Spotify is called Ebion, and that's where I really explored Native American sounds. Ooh. So mixed with acoustic guitar. So a lot of Native American flutes, Native American drums, something that you might think is often a little more typical for, kind of a mindfulness practice, because there's a lot of that. But it's still very rhythmic oriented, and it has the American fusion that I put in there is this rich acoustic guitar that comes in over it throughout that whole EP. So that one just released on Spotify about a month ago. Okay. And I'm still pumping them out, and so can I share with people how they can find out where it's at? Yeah,
definitely.
So, the artist name is B, which we've discussed is difficult to find if you search for it. So you can go to my website, which is bkscottmusic.com, bkscottmusic.com. And there's a page on there about the artist B, and that has all of the links to Apple and to Spotify for all of these EPs. And once you find it once on Spotify, you can find all the other ones there.
All right, yeah. And we'll make sure to add all the links in the description so that everyone can find you and create their own little playlists out of all your beautiful music. So.
Make a playlist and share it with me, and let me know what turns you on.
Yeah, I'll continue to listen for sure. I've loved everything so far that I've heard. So thank you so much for doing this episode, and just for following your calling and, creating this beautiful work for us.
Thank you, Astral. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And thanks for coming out, Philip.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And thank you all for tuning in. Check us out next time on the Astral Hour.